Keena, you ready? Okay. I'll bring the Charlottesville City Council December 1st, 2025 meeting to order. Ms. Thomas, would you please call the roll?
Councilor Oshron?
Here.
Councilor Payne is not here yet. Vice Mayor Pinkston?
Here.
Councilor Snook?
Here.
Mayor Wade?
Here. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please say no. This meeting, the motion passes. This meeting will be divided into 3 sections. The first one will be a work session where we will hear and discuss presentations that do not require a council vote, followed by a closed session, and then we will have our regular business meeting at 6:30. Today, we're going to get all things transportation and a budget brief. So, City Manager Sanders.
Good evening, councilors and members of the public. This is budget brief number 2 of 3. In the next meeting on the 15th will be your 3rd and final budget brief. This has been part of the process that I've implemented in bringing to you an opportunity to take a sneak peek into the budget drafting process. And the point of the exercise is to, in each of the budget briefs, identify areas of change, an adjustment that fall into these different categories. And the goal would be to help you begin to see how easy or not so easy it is to pull the budget together and to, of course, bring you a balanced budget, which is what I'm required to do. But the desire that I have for you is just to highlight in these budget briefs progress that we're making, challenges that we are facing, and opportunities that we might be seeing. For this transportation conversation, I ask for multiple staff members to be present so that they can join me up here at the microphone because they're the experts and can speak to some of the details that may be formed in the way of questions from each of you. But I'm going to walk you through a series of slides that just highlight what I just described about what's going on with transportation and how it is fitting into the budget for FY27. So I started with the first round of the first budget brief to tell you that I was looking at 3 budget drivers: transportation, affordable housing, and schools as investments. And then I shifted and said that no, we should never miss an opportunity to talk about public safety. So we talked about that in the first round. And then I pointed out to you that schools are to be determined. Your joint meeting later this month with the school system will be the opportunity to hear from the superintendent, where he will give you an overview of where he sees things going in regards to putting their budget draft together for the school board to approve. And then we will get that information and begin working that into ours as well. So just looking at transit, one of the things that we are pointing out to you and more or less revealing to the public as an additional approach to trying to prioritize changes for transportation, we have heard loud and clear that there's a push and a desire for there to be more drivers, therefore enhanced service. So we have identified in the FY27 budget the opportunity for us to phase in changes over the next 4 years. This has been some serious work that we've done internally. We engaged our finance committee, of which a couple of you serve on. We have engaged Albemarle County as well, because whatever we do in the way of changing the service delivery of transportation, and it is increasing their costs, which is why you see Ryan here. He's not infiltrating, he's learning as well, and trying to make sure that we have said the same things that we told him in meetings as well. But what we wanted to point out is that we see that things have changed in the update that we sought to get for where we stand with being able to enhance the service. We've been operating with the optimization study that was done that indicated that we needed 82 drivers to be able to get enhanced services. We have now found that that actually requires more than that by looking at just the state of change today in this evolving world of transportation services. So what we did was internally spend time working through the idea of trying to figure out how the budget could support advancing in a significant way the number of drivers that we have available. We've identified that 108 operators is the target that we're trying to achieve. 4 years is the window that we have pitched as the opportunity to be able to phase that in over the next 4 budget cycles, assuming that we can handle the additional costs in each budget, of course relying on the results of our various our taxes performing and the receivables that come in various other ways. Being able to manage our expenses as well would make it possible for us to see the absorption of about 10 to 11 operators over the next 4 years, plus support staff, which we always try to remind you that it's not just drivers. When you add more drivers, there are other support staff that have to be available in order for the whole service to work. And we would be trying to work in the reintroduction of Sunday service, hopefully in the 3rd year of this 4-year transition. But we won't be able to get to that point until we actually have 90 operators in place. So this is part of what we're trying to prioritize, being able to be responsive to the requests that have been made by the public at large, by a number of you who have indicated that you would like to see enhanced service. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that in a minute. But the goal would be that we would try to target this as a plan for where we would focus over the next 4 years. It doesn't mean that it can't change. You have already made it possible for a transportation plan to be developed. That plan could very easily come back and give us other ideas and other things that we could work on, and we will integrate those going forward. But this would be the commitment that we would like to make sure that we can kick off as a part of the FY27 budget process.
So we are now at how many operators?
66.
And the plan before this revision would have been to move to?
82 was the number that we had been operating under as the low number. With
For
well
next
over,
fiscal year.
Well, not necessarily next fiscal year, that was the number that we needed to get to. We had not yet committed to any other number. We were talking about 6 additional drivers at the end of your budget process last year.
I remember, yeah.
So that would have been what we would have tried to comply with, being able to figure out a way to make fit into the budget. So now I'm telling you that we're going to be pushing for that number to be more like 10 or 11 based on what we can afford.
Okay.
And this might be happening later in the presentation, but we've seen several presentations where there's different scenarios, 108 operators with this level of service, all of that.
Right.
With one of the points that we've discussed is whether or not we need to get 30-minute service on every route before you can get 15 minutes on the routes that people are requesting the most.
Right.
Are we talking about those scenarios later in this presentation?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
I'll show you what we feel like we can see at this time, knowing that this is the beginning of, and the goal would be to continue to try to perfect this as time goes by and more drivers and support staff are added to the system. Transportation infrastructure, we have a commitment to be zero emission by 2050. We have a target that we as a city have set of 2040. We recognize that there's going to be additional investments that are required. We intend for that to be a part of the 2027 conversation, not necessarily driving the 2027 budget, but we do believe that this is really a conversation that needs further attention in your work session schedule next year, because that might be some places that we can consider to make adjustments to be able to offset some of the costs that we're facing with being able to enhance service at the rate we're now discussing. So what does service improvements look like if we were to get to 76 operators? Because that's the number we're talking about, adding 10 or 11 drivers, but if we'll go with 10, get you from 66 to 76, then what you see is green, more green, the top being weekday with existing 66 operators and the bottom being weekday with 76 operators. The key difference is that you see 15-minute service pop into the picture where it has not been. And it is not something that we would anticipate being able to get to without a significant number of additional drivers. And we were going to remind you that a lot of our focus has been on routes 4, 5, 6, and 7. We have focused on those because we know that there is a high degree of dependency of riders on being able to use those routes and individuals who have one car or less. So that dependency is really identified by their inability to have other choices. So with what we're proposing to you right now is that this is what you will begin to see happening over the next 4 years of this transition. As we add riders, you will see performance improvement. In the past few years, we've been adding drivers, and we haven't necessarily been able to tell you what the improvement would be. We've just added drivers because we know we needed drivers. So now what we're trying to do is tie the additional drivers to the actual service improvement that you can see.
So Sam, your previous slide said what it would look like in the next fiscal year.
Yes, that's what this is.
Okay, because.
This is showing you what the next fiscal
Okay.
year service delivery would look like. The top being what it is today, the bottom being what it would be with those additional drivers. And then on your Saturday service lines, you'll see that there is 15-minute service, part of the trolley system that comes in on your Saturdays. And the goal would be, again, as we add more, we get more. So we would try to make sure that we can enhance that to the best of our ability over time.
Why would you move to 15-minute service on the trolley on Saturday, but not, oh, I'm sorry, I was comparing apples to apples. I'm sorry, never
Got it.
mind.
No problem.
Stupid question.
Yeah. Bottom is progress. That's why it's
Right.
blue. All right. All right, so just a summary of the changes. This was a lot. I'm not going to read through all of it, and we'll make sure we get this posted because we were trying to make sure I had everything that I needed for this. But overall, the goal would be that 76 operators don't get us to the 82 operator scenario that we've been striving for. So that is why it falls short of some of the improvements that we would like to see, which are the items that you see bulleted down below on the second part of this slide. The things that we do get at the top is improved weekday frequency, and that's something that we wanted to make sure would happen, something that we could really speak to. Why would we do this? Why would we prioritize this over something else, so that we could really show you as council the trade-off that you're willing to sign off on by investing this heavily in transit this way. And then, of course, as I've continued to say, and I'm saying it intentionally over and over, is, and as we add drivers and we get better service and all the things that continue to sit on the list of unrealized benefits today become reality as we add those different folks.
So Sam,
Yes.
do we have any routes or services now that should be either changed or eliminated, and maybe there's some areas that we're hearing from residents or from studies, whatever, that we should add that we don't have any now?
There's always a request for service to go where service does not currently go. We recognize that we can't really try our best to make all those things happen because we'd be going in all different directions, and that's not really a system that you can manage. We have considered, do we make recommendations on cutting back? It's hard to take it away because we know that there are some people who are relying on it, and until we can really get things to what I would consider to be a more optimal level where we're not seeing a 60-minute route anywhere in our network, then I don't think we can really trust that we've really proven that we know enough about our system and its mechanics.
Right, I know we have some different routes that just it was Friday morning, I took a client, a resident of Potcham, to Crozet because he had a job out there, but I'm not sure, Mike, if it's a jaunt route or if but it's a lifesaver. It doesn't run all the time, but for them to go out there to work at the warehouse and come back, it's services like that we're kind of piecing different things together, so.
Yeah, and like I said, I have others here, and I'll let Garland come up and explain anything else that we might want to go into greater detail on, but I'm sorry, go
Real
ahead.
quick, just because
Yep.
it's kind of small, is that blue extension all the way to the airport?
Yes. That is correct. To Hollymead. That's to Hollymead, but it does include a loop to the airport. Potentially. I know we talked about that, potentially. But that's part of the county's request to be able to reach Hollymead, so that then increases what their contribution is in being able to extend the service out there as well.
Okay, thank you.
And we're always trying to remain conscious of where it is that people are trying to get to in numbers that we can prove. So then we go into infrastructure for transportation. Bus shelters and bus stops have been a hot topic. I've continued to laugh about the idea that when I had my first town hall taking this position, a number of the questions that came in were about sidewalks and bus stop shelters. And I'm happy that we've been able to deliver. So in 2025, you see there we have shelters that were completed, some that we did ourselves, some that we did in partnership, which is also great to be able to realize, especially when we partner with developers themselves for projects that they're doing and add a bus stop or shelter. And then we have a series currently in design, so there'll be additional moments to see that this infrastructure is coming in to support the individuals who are having to wait for the bus and give them the protection from the elements. I think that is something that we definitely want to continue to prioritize and get them wherever we can make them make sense. And then sidewalks, as I mentioned, I guess that's probably become my favorite topic, and I talk about it so much. We completed projects. We were able to add our own concrete crew back to the city itself, so we've been able to push more projects out and not find ourselves focused on trying to see if we can put enough projects together to get someone to bid on them. We've been able to do a number of things ourselves. And we have a series of projects in design: Prospect Avenue, 9th Street at Forest Hills, and a few other areas that are all related to supporting safe routes to schools, because a lot of our work today has been prioritized in that manner since our school routes, our walking zones have been increased or expanded. Urgent infrastructure improvements, you all heard me kind of share that term in response to a pedestrian fatality that occurred in October of 2024 on Elliott Avenue. It has really allowed us to refocus the team on trying to figure out what is our approach to prioritizing safety improvements. We were able to go back over a good number of lists that have been accumulating over the years. We hadn't necessarily been working each of those lists in the order that they even occurred in. We were able to pull the Bike Ped Advisory Committee back to the table and engage in a real conversation with them, having $500,000 that I requested of council to make available to give them then the task of identifying which of these projects are urgent projects, how many of them can be done, with the expectation that they will be done by the end of this month, actually. There were 34 projects that were identified, and a good number of them have found their way to completion and are very close to being completed. Yeah, all right, I'm looking at Ben to tell me yes. So we've been continuing to push through on that. I described it as urgent infrastructure because, of course, it was a finite amount of money that was made available for that series of projects, but all infrastructure is urgent. So now we've been really able to beef up our process, and the goal is that we can hopefully churn out infrastructure projects to completion. I mentioned safe routes to schools. We are always looking at additional ways that we can strengthen the routes that our children are having to take on their path to school, and that is walking and on bikes. So we prioritized a number of additional improvements that support their ability to do that. We have photo traffic enforcement in 3 school zones that we have not had before. We're still working to perfect that system and make sure that people really honor the fact that there are young people traveling at early times of the day and need them to pay attention to them. And we're going to continue to do quick build interventions that we think will help support that in different areas that make it a little bit easier and safer. And then we have our ADA transition plan. A lot of the items that came out of the ADA transition plan were very much focused on sidewalks or curb ramps primarily. We have spent a good number of years identifying the need to do these projects, and now we're going to focus on actually getting those projects done. We have done a lot of internal shifting and changing to how the team will consider thinking about these projects, and having completed the transition plan earlier this year and now engaging the Public Advisory Committee, then the goal would be to prioritize projects and then begin delivering them with what you all agreed to in the last budget, which was to allocate $2 million into each year of that 5-year CIP to make sure that projects can get done. And I continue to remind you that that is simply a down payment, because that transition plan identified well over $150 million worth of improvements that need to occur across the city. So $2 million a year really is a drop in the bucket. And because we are doing this work to basically demonstrate best effort, That is the best effort that we can identify until more money would be identified through the selection of projects by the committee, which is what I would be looking for in future years, but also biding time for if we were to ever be visited by the DOJ. I assure you that $2 million a year will not cut what they force us to do. And we will have to do a lot more than that. So in the interim, the goal is to get the team to really focus on collaborating with the public on identifying true urgent priorities, and then being able to determine what is the budgets associated with getting more projects done. And it could come in well above $2 million a year when we start consistently working on those. And we do have challenges. I don't mind telling you when we have troubles. It's sometimes easier if I try to hide it from you, but then you'll find out about it and you'll be mad at me. So I'd rather just tell you the truth. We've had some projects that remain stuck. These three on this page have been stuck: Meadow Creek Trail, Pollux Branch Bridge, and the East High Streetscape. The East High Streetscape is actually moving. We've identified some ways to get the budget back in line, so we're working through addressing those matters, and we don't feel a need to come back to council to ask for money. But the first two, will probably be having to ask you for more money, and it pains me to do so, but we're trying to not lose the projects. Meadow Creek Trail really came in well over budget for what we had, and I'd already come back to you. I think I've asked you for money twice now on that particular project, and it's still not enough. And then the Pollux Branch Bridge actually is a project scope change because the construction at South First Street has required that it be moved. That now requires us to resurvey the area and to do some additional design work. So before we can even tell you what the needed funds are, we have to complete that work and come back to you. So both of these are things that I'm working on right now. Meadow Creek is probably going to come back before you in the first meeting in January. And then the Pollux Branch Bridge item, hopefully we can make that happen shortly thereafter.
Sam, do you know what's causing the the issues with Meadow Creek Trail? Is it?
It's been a complicated project. The crossings have been hard to navigate. There is a Ravenna easement that was really difficult to also navigate and require significant construction intervention. And I just think overall the project, once we were able to get it into the hands of our capital division and public works, we found that when we started doing the work, we really needed to plan for bigger contingencies. And we've proven now that those contingencies weren't even close. So putting it out for bid, because all that time had gone by, putting it out for bid and coming back, the numbers just came in dramatically higher.
Yeah.
So that's the project work that's happening right now. I think the team is probably done and waiting on me to decide if I'm going to come and ask you for more money. So we're pretty close to making that decision. Success stories, because I always love to focus on when we're getting things done, because I hear so often you should do this and you should do that. So this is what we did. We just cut the ribbon on the Rugby Avenue shared use path. I know that was a long delayed and much debated and project, and people asked me to go ahead and cancel the project and take the barriers away, but we got it done, so now it is finished. The Washington Park Connector is up next. It'll be shortly before us, probably having another ribbon cutting moment for that moment of connecting to the neighborhoods and allowing people to have easy access to the park, the lower level, and then being able to get up top. Our e-bike voucher pilot program has been wildly successful. We're going to be, our sustainability team with the transportation team will be doing assessments on that. I have no doubt they'll ask me for more money. I think they pretty much conditioned me to believe that that's what they're going to do. And I know one of you wants me to do that anyway. So we're going to be looking at that and looking into the request to figure out how to support HR enhancements in the way of multimodal transportation to work. So we're going to be looking into that as well. I showed you the picture of the bus shelter, Midway Manor specifically. It's a celebration moment for me because Ms. Carey has been on my left shoulder reminding me that you owe me a bus shelter and you better hurry up. So we finally got that done as well. There's a lot more work that needs to be done in that space, and we showed you how we've gotten some more done and we have more in the process of being planned. We know that alternative fuels transition is going to be a big deal for CAT. That's why we feel like we need to really take a look at the climate commitment that we've made with now this new commitment to trying to enhance the services and how to make sure that those two remain aligned and within budget. And then our improved collaborations and new opportunities, of course, with Albemarle County and VDOT. CARTA is a great opportunity for us to begin to reimagine regional transportation with our partners there as well as Jaunt, and find ways that we can serve as many people as consistently as we possibly can, and where we can make expansions, Mayor, as you mentioned, where we can make expansions to reach people and to take them places that they can't currently go, then hopefully through those collaborations will be how those things happen. Upcoming construction, and before we move on there, I'll just say that with the county, we've been able to commit to retaining fare free. So that'll be a part of the budget. You'll see that as a highlight in the budget as an expense that we're not asking you to absorb, well, we're asking you to absorb to be able to keep the service that way. We think it's important for us to be able to try to rebuild our ridership, and one of the best ways to do that is to simply say you can get on the bus whenever it passes. Upcoming construction, our Public Works team, that capital division that I mentioned, has been working really hard. It's a reconstituted team of project managers, engineers that are working to get projects moving. We are slated to have a good number of projects underway in 2026. So we'll say out loud, pardon our progress. It will impede your ability to do some things, but when it's all said and done, we'll all be happy for it. And we have projects planned all the way through completion in 2029. And we have EV charging work. Our Office of Sustainability is working hard to identify where we can put charging, how much, what's the right amount. Do we incentivize individuals for charging in certain ways? And we are really having internal conversations with our fleet manager in regards to the municipal fleet. Where can we make a conversion? What is the best way to go about doing that over time? We have started looking at opportunities to begin that transition in the next couple of years in our CIP, therefore accounting for some of the increased costs that we may have to incur for converting some vehicles, but over time, we might also be able to reduce the size of our fleet, because we are finding that there are some moments of underutilization. So if we can eliminate cars that we are currently carrying as a part of the fleet, then we can then absorb some of the costs that we may find in the higher costs for EV.
And keep in mind that Charlottesville is quite small, and electric bikes are EVs as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I went through all of that because I really wanted to save time, because I imagine that you may have questions, and I want to let the folks who can go into greater details than myself come up and speak to you as well. But we have done the CIP public hearing with the Planning Commission that happened last week. If you are interested, I would encourage you to go back and watch it. There were a lot of questions and comments that really lent themselves to the, that is politics, and I don't do politics, so you need to speak to council. So there's some things that you might want to go and take a look at, commentary that was shared in those moments of, those are not my call, and I pretty much made it that simple and clear in my response back to, why don't we do this and can't we do this? We have this budget brief today. The 15th is the third and final one, focused on affordable housing. And then on the 18th, as I mentioned, you have a joint meeting with the school board. I'll be making my annual presentation on March 2nd. That'll be my chance to bring to you a balanced budget. Right now, I don't see it. Working on it. We have a lot of things that we still have to try to make come together. It looks a bit challenging at this time, but we'll definitely have more conversation over the next few weeks on how we reconcile that. Budget adoption is scheduled for April 9th. So that's what we're charging towards, is our mission that we must accept as it is presented. So that's it. If you have questions, I'll stop and let you pose any further questions, and I'll invite others to come up. And I'll actually extend to them a chance to come up if they want to emphasize anything that I didn't go into.
Before I ask council if they had questions, did others want to come in up now, or?
You'll have to if you want to. Ben,
Oh,
you sure?
okay.
That means I did a good job. See, I like that. They helped me do this, so I trusted them, and I worked with what they
Either that or
gave me.
they're leaving you hanging out on that
That
bench.
too, it's possible. They know I can handle it. So are there any other questions or thoughts that you all are having about the budget, transportation as well?
I'm going to offer the invitation to Jen, if you had any questions or anything. Okay. Michael, do you have any?
With the drivers, what's the cost between the number of drivers we have now and that goal of 108, correct?
I knew somebody was gonna, you go over there. I knew somebody would ask me a question that I wouldn't have off the top of my head, and I told Chrissy she didn't have to come.
Garland Williams, Director of Transit. You asked to the 42 for the which one, to the 108?
Yes, compared to where we are now, what's the increase in cost?
Just for the drivers, that is $3.3, almost $3.4 million just for the drivers, based on today's cost.
So it's not counting for the time of adding some every year over the next several years and the inflation.
Well, you have collective bargaining changes that'll automatically increase that.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, you're good. So yeah, so over a period of years, just trying to bake in, at least 3.5, well, more than that, into our annual operating budget, which I think is harder than, the one-time expense of purchasing, a bus. So definitely will take a lot of planning there. With the recent state-level election, are we anticipating changes in the amount of funding that would be coming to public transportation for CAT?
There's a lot of proposals that are out there that could potentially change the funding model to fixed route transit systems like myself, and then for the rural side also like Mike. That's the current administration going out, and there's a recommendation that will go before CTB, the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Not sure if that's going to make it through the committee or not. So, there's a lot of things that are floating in the air, but with the current administration, there's some potentially harmful changes that will happen for CAT. But the new administration coming in, there's speculation about providing more money for public transportation. So we'll have to see how that pans out in the General Assembly session starting in January.
Mm-hmm. But the baseline is we were potentially anticipating like a loss of funds. The new baseline is perhaps possible, likely, I know you can't speculate, but that's no longer the case, and then maybe additional money on top of that.
There's things that we can do as a organization, as a region together to potentially find more money. But as far as the incoming administration, there has been a speculation that there will be more money for public transit available. Don't know what that is, but I'm hopeful that the potential cuts that, for CAT, there would have been somewhere between potentially $600,000 and $1 million will not materialize. So let's keep our fingers crossed and that CTB won't elect those changes as this administration walks out the door.
Mm-hmm. And I know this has been explained before in the past, but why do bus shelters take so long?
Great question.
We get that question a
Let's
lot.
make him answer that question again, because I posed that.
So, one of the major reasons that bus shelters take so long is there's a huge planning process that has to go. There's a site plan for every single bus stop that has to be done. That site plan process can take anywhere from 4 to 6 months. And then once that is done, then there is the internal processes of each jurisdiction to get the final okays, and then we can get to construction. Depending on when the construction processes are going to happen, if it's in the winter, it's hard to lay concrete in the middle of the winter. So it's a timing issue of when we can make it happen also. So we're really only talking about spring, summer, and early fall. And if anything falls in the kind of the winter section, we really have to wait until the spring to kind of lay concrete and make the final pieces happen. So it's just, unfortunately, it just takes a while.
is that state level regulations that are imposing the site plans and that length of process?
Yes. It's primarily our, the agreement in VDOT right away. VDOT has to have a hand in it, and they have to help us and approve. There's an approval process on their side of the house also. So I think part of what the frustration that we all have is transit agencies are being asked to move faster and putting stuff in, but they want to be, the folks who are giving us the money, whether regardless whether it's the feds or the state, want to make sure that that the infrastructure we put in is going to be permanent, that, you know, you don't get a situation where you put down a bus pad or put down a shelter, the community has a complaint, be asked to move, you have to continue to move it, so you have to start that process all over again. So that's really why this process takes a little while. We want to make sure we've gone through all of the vetting processes, and if there's any community pushback, then we can alleviate that before we start, you know, actually implementing this stop.
Thank you. Separate from transit, with the quick build projects at this point, what is the feedback you've heard or your assessment of how successful it's been?
Hey there, Ben Chambers, Transportation Planning Manager. We've gotten some mixed feedback on it, and we're also looking at big data to see if there are any changes to speed, volumes, that sort of thing. We also have some quick builds that are still on the list, not the ones that were urgent transportation improvements, but ones that we have worked through in the past. They're up on our webpage right now. We're looking at, you know, what's the priorities for putting those in next year based on what we've learned from this year. How do we need to engage the community on things that we have identified in the past but want to make sure we're putting on the ground correctly in the future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, you know, it's hard to know any anecdotal, but likewise, I've heard, you know, some positive things, and I think the negative thing I've heard the most is just that the plastic bollards are so quick and so cheap that they fall down in a strong wind, and drivers ignore them, knock them over very frequently, and I know that's kind of in part the nature of quick builds, but I don't know how effective the plastic bollards are.
Yeah, that's exactly part of the purpose behind the quick builds, is figure out, do the bollards work? That's a pretty quick, cheap solution. If we can find scenarios where that does work and isn't going to get torn out of the ground very easily, we would like to be able to use that as a tool at our disposal. It's not going to be the perfect tool for all uses, and we're learning which ones it's not a great tool for.
Certainly. Yeah, and obviously, you know, protected bike pedestrian lanes are the ideal, but I understand it's a long way to get there.
We do have some constraints with our right-of-way for getting there, but we're working on plans for that.
And with the safety improvements, you mentioned, you know, looking citywide at traffic safety improvements. What are those? What is being looked at citywide, and what is the criteria for when a safety improvement should or shouldn't be made?
Actually, we've done a little better than citywide. This past year, we adopted our region safety action plan that was done by TJPDC, along with all of the jurisdictions around us. And within that, we have a chapter that looks at just City of Charlottesville. What are the hot spots that we need to address? What are the kind of projects that we need to look at fixing at those locations? Some of that includes stuff that we're already looking at, like projects that we're working on with VDOT in the 5th Street corridor, in the 29 corridor, places that we kind of all in this room know that those are problems. We've got plans already in place that you as council have adopted already to guide us to know where to put those.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, not even necessarily for which projects will be immediately done or put on, you know, the top of a list, but just to even make a list of something to be done. What's the criteria? You know, something meets VDOT standards, or it's VDOT, you know, within their framework, something should be installed. Like, is that enough, or is it kind of ad hoc? What determines what it is and isn't put on a list?
So we may be talking about two different things here. So quick builds, determining what we're doing with those going forward, that'll be a conversation between NDS and Public Works about how the current quick builds are working and seeing if there are opportunities to move forward with those. Identifying new safety improvements, through our safety action plan, Move Safely Blue Ridge. That lays out kind of what the improvements we're looking for in those areas are. We won't have to do too much research and work to come up with what the improvements are that we kind of agreed to as a region.
Yeah, I hear that. It would just be great to have, you know, an objective standard, so there's maybe a little less perception of kind of, it's ad hoc whether something is or is not put on a list. And then it's a little outside of the budget, but I would just say I'm concerned if we're looking at speed limit reductions citywide, I'm concerned that's going to slow us down from actually making speed limit reductions because the lift of that is going to be so big that it's just going to drag it out when we could identify specific corridors and make those speed limit reductions, I think, on a much faster timeline. And there's already corridors, we know, multiple ones that are probably our first priority for speed limit reductions. And also, when it comes to speed tables and reducing the speed through that kind of infrastructure, how often, at least we on council hear, oh, that's not possible because of fire trucks, when if you just had an offset speed table, they could get through, and that is done in many localities. Like, really, I guess also kind of having an objective standard for when can speed tables be installed or not installed, because it just feels, at least to me, it feels kind of like a gray area. But I know, but
Yeah, so two things there. The speed limit discussion is something that we'll be working on over the next few months. It's tied to that big data set that we're looking at that does speed and volume, and we are looking to see, are there opportunities that are just low-hanging fruit where we know that people aren't speeding there today and we can reduce speed limits. We're working through that analysis right now. That's also tied to that question about speed tables and where they can be placed effectively. We've put out several of these speed tables that have the cutouts for the fire trucks through the urgent transportation improvements over the past year, and we're watching those and seeing how have they addressed speed in those corridors and what can we learn from those to apply to other neighborhood streets.
Mm-hmm. And final question, you know, when we're determining what happens with speed limit reductions, you know, at a local level, are we following the updated Federal Highway Administration guidelines on the 85th percentile rule, or are we still going with that outdated framework of, you know, that we consider that the rule in terms of what the speed limit needs to be?
Going by the 85th percentile rule is actually the old rule.
Right.
So the new rule says you should look at the 85th percentile rule, but you should also consider other contextual things that would be significant. That's what we're looking at right now, because the FHWA does not actually describe what those contextual things are specifically. It says things like, look where there may be major pedestrian generators. Well, how are we defining that as the city of Charlottesville? Those are the sorts of things that we're discussing and looking into as part of that recommendation that we'll bring before you after we've completed some of that speed data analysis.
But we are following those updated guidelines and not approaching the 85th percentile rule as kind of like an ironclad rule
Correct.
that we can't violate.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie, you have any?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your questions, Michael. So I had some similar ones. Bobbing back up to the earlier part of the chat, where we had originally planned on the zero emission transition by 2040, but now that was shifted to 2050. Was that decision made in collaboration with our sustainability team?
We haven't changed. That was a reference to the goal that is the larger, much larger goal is 2050. We, through our planning effort here in the city, have adopted a 2040 plan. So the question is, do we make a shift so that we can get through the fact that the federal government today is not interested,
Yeah.
very much interested in supporting a transition such as the one that we've agreed to do ourselves, that we may need some time, so then we can shift from 2040 to 20-something else and still hit the 2050 goal. And I think that's what I've identified in conversations with our team that we probably should have as a conversation with you, and let you think about that a little bit more and engage the sustainability team in that conversation.
Yeah, because I know that's something that was a big topic starting before I joined council, but in the intervening couple of years, there's not only kind of less federal support that's coming our way for that, but also if we're then having to make up that local match dollars, is that the highest and best use of that money? And so I know the kind of appetite for a quick, fast transition to those is, the context is different nowadays. I just wanted to make sure that the sustainability team's part of
Yes,
that convo.
absolutely.
Because I know they're going to be, they're pushing for and so are some of our local advocates pushing for that. But with the broader context, it's going to be hard to do that. For the bus stops, I think one of the other things that is a complicating factor for improving bus stops that has mentioned before, and I wanted to bring that up and double check, is that anytime we touch anything about a bus stop, we have to make it fully ADA compliant, right?
Not necessarily. So it's, if I move a sign, that's not really affecting
Sure.
a bus stop. But if I pull up if there is a bench and I pull the bench up, I actually have materially potentially changed the bus stop. And we're also going through a review process of all of the bus stops anyway. So if we move something and it's not ADA compliant, we do have to make that ADA compliant before when we bring it back up. So if we take it offline, we'd have to basically put it back as an ADA.
And even if we
qualified.
want to do something like keep everything the same but just pop a bench in there, we can't do that because we would have to make the whole thing ADA compliant by adding a ramp and all this stuff.
Technically,
Yeah, so.
because you'd be creating an ADA violation if you did.
Yeah, so
Right.
the things that we want to make sure we understand is that we want to make sure we're doing whatever we can to prevent individuals can come back and make a complaint and say that we have materially changed this bus stop, but we have not made it ADA compliant. Now we're in violation, which means there's federal violations that we can be taxed. They can take money from us, they can do all sorts of things, and we don't want to be in that situation.
Right. So the city can't just do a bench campaign, unfortunately.
It seems easy. It really does seem easy.
So the city can't.
Yeah, well, that's true.
'Kay.
I get what you point out. I think part of my review of some of the settlement agreements that communities have had to enter into, some of the reasons why they got into the hot water that they got into was not because they had ADA violations, period. Every community has ADA violations, and especially one that's been around as long as this one. The reality is that they're looking for us to be able to demonstrate that when the law changed, what did you do differently? What have you continued to do differently to be conscious of the idea that people in your community are having an accessibility issue, and it is your obligation to do something about that. So if they see us creating new violations while trying to fix some of the longstanding ones, then we haven't really embodied that demonstrated best effort legal concept that I try to use. Practicing what I would say on the stand if I had to go to court. I think ideally I'd want to be able to demonstrate that we have clearly acknowledged our problem. That's what the ADA transition plan does. It does not hide anything. Again, $150 million worth of improvements around the city. A lot of places haven't done that because they don't want to know what that number is. I think for us, in adding the money into the CIP, was to say it's important to us. It's important for us to talk internally about a culture of compliance as it relates to ADA. Then we have to make sure that we're not creating new moments. It's why the Dominion conversation, as tense as that conversation is one that we have not let up on. And we're trying to figure out ways to help them work with us better so that they can then work with their vendors better. And if we say move that pole, it doesn't take 3 years to move it.
Yeah, and that's just, I brought it up just to explain again, like, that's a problem
Yeah.
that we're facing when we want to improve bus stops and shelters as quickly as possible, is there's all of these other strings that are attached that we're having to work through.
Yeah.
And I think our city attorney would advise us to, whenever we materially are going to do some improvements, that we follow the new law and get to the ADA standard.
Yeah.
He's shaking his head.
And so, let me scroll down to where my notes are. One of the other things that Michael brought up was the kind of cross purposes of wanting to do traffic calming and also not wanting to break our fire trucks, and how a lot of the traffic calming things that we would think would be quick and easy and effective would make it harder for fire trucks to respond. And of course, we want fire trucks and other emergency vehicles to be able to get to the scene as quickly as possible, but we also are aware that most fire truck responses are not for fires, but for medical emergencies or traffic incidents. So there's that catch-22 of if we make the street better, the fire trucks don't need to go as many places, but then by making the street better, the fire trucks have a harder time getting to the places when they're needed. So something that I had brought up, I don't know when, months ago, maybe last year, was a conversation about smaller fire trucks, which is something that other communities do. And I'm wondering if there has been any continued discussion about that in the department.
So that came up in the CIP conversation last week as well, and planning commissioners didn't like my answer, so I'm preparing myself now. We have not looked to shift the models that we currently use. We have an ongoing cycle replacement, so but we have not prioritized making changes yet. I think we've acknowledged that with the changes that we're proposing, and we have yet to see materialize as a part of our zoning code change, that we're going to have more development, and for that, the bigger truck is probably the better answer for accessing where we may have density in places that the ladder is the only way to really get to the fire. There's been I'll say a more than just a reservation. I think we just haven't really prioritized the analysis. But there's a reservation about the idea. Some indications from some of the comments last week was, well, we have difficulty moving these big trucks down roads. I can assure you our professionals have figured out how to move these trucks down the roads when they need to. Having ridden on one this summer, I was amazed at what they did with the biggest truck that we have, and still am amazed when I see it going down the street. I think we are probably going to find ourselves closer to that question of, do we go with smaller fire trucks, the same as we've been repeatedly asked, why don't we go with smaller buses? It's not that simple, and I think where places have figured it out, part of what we need to do is figure out, how did you conclude that when you made that decision? Because to go backwards to a smaller truck to only need to come back to a bigger one probably sets you up for not really being able to serve well. But the answer is we haven't gotten there yet.
And sorry to butt in, but I mean, I would just agree that, I mean, lots of localities have adopted smaller vehicles for medical and rescue calls, and they keep the larger one for an actual fire.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm just thinking, I have a friend who would regularly do a totally legal, allowed bonfire. Every single time they did it, a neighbor would call the fire department. They had to come out. Every couple of weeks, they're coming out with the whole truck to look at it and go, yep, that's fine. And that kind of thing's happening all the time, and that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I get it. So it's part of the ongoing conversation. I'll just say that we probably can continue to think about prioritizing it. We just haven't done that yet.
Yeah, because I would agree that my vision would be that there's a mix where, you know, for the less.
We would absolutely recommend.
Yeah,
it.
the traffic situations don't need the hook and ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say that one of the conversations that I've had with the chief specifically is, one of the things I remember talking to him early on was, do we know, do we need another fire station somewhere? And if so, where in the city do we need it? I think that lends itself to the idea that maybe we can try something because of where we may choose to serve from a proximity standpoint by having a different truck, and maybe that's the test case for starting something like that. That work has been done, and I'm right now waiting to schedule that presentation for us to take a look at that more closely. That could be a chance. We serve the university. That's part of our agreement. They are building a lot more on grounds today. They're building very sophisticated facilities today that are going to probably require a little bit more than just one truck response. So there's some questions there as well, and I think there's a real conversation that needs to be had with them, and I've talked to him about that as well.
And they pay us for that, correct?
And they do, and I don't know if they pay us what we need to do.
Hey, there we go.
Budget conversation.
Okay, thank you for that. Because the other thing that comes into play with, and we saw this, where it was a quick build by Summit Elementary, which is, on the safe routes to school, where the bike lane was on the inside of the parked cars, and that had to be reversed to allow a greater right-of-way for a fire truck to be able to get down that street. And so now, the kids and families who were previously biking on the safe side of the parked cars are out in the middle of the road. So it's,
That's the tension of it all, yeah.
yeah, there's, that's too bad. And I wish, if the root cause of that is the size of our fire trucks, we're building all of this infrastructure to fit those instead of fitting those into the infrastructure that we
Sure, and I think part of what you've all heard me say as this tenure of serving as city manager, that status quo is not the land that I live in. I'm constantly interested in making sure that we have tested why we're holding on to doing this way. And I think this is another reminder that maybe I need to remind folks that they should come back and tell me something.
Yeah, especially because I know there's a long lead time on fire trucks, the way there is with the
Right.
bus. So if it
Very
is something
long.
we're interested in doing,
Yeah.
the sooner we're thinking about that, the better.
Yeah, I mean, if things were to change too much more, we might find ourselves being forced to do something like that, just because the lead time has grown dramatically for fire trucks.
Yeah. Thank you for including both the challenges and the success stories. It's good to have something to cheer for, and the upcoming construction. That's always something that people want to know about
Absolutely.
and not be surprised by, because that's,
Yeah,
as
we're
we've,
gonna make sure we announce things well ahead.
yeah,
so
as
that
we've
people
talked
can
about before,
prepare.
infrastructure is where people interact with their government the most.
Right.
So as much heads up as possible is good to hear. And then for school zone cameras, are we able to expand them to all the schools, or what's the constraint for just doing it for a handful of?
Right now, that's your call. We made this a pilot, and we picked these 3 schools because this is where, when the school crossing guards really spoke highly about doing something, because there were a lot of issues a few years back, the initiation of the idea of going with cameras was to pick the schools where we knew that there was significant issue. So the 3 locations have been selected and deployed for that reason. If that were to be something you all would look to do, I would probably say to you that it's best for us to give it a little time and see what we get out of the violations that we identify, and then determine if you want to do that. I'm sure we can deploy them rather easily. We're still working through the management of that process, though.
Okay, thanks.
It's still new, because we just really started.
And then for the bus driver scenarios, is that going to come back to us in more depth at some point?
When
or
you
do
say
we?
more depth as to, I mean, it'll be a highlight in my budget message to you, so there'll be more information pertaining to exactly what number of drivers, other support staff, all of that will be identified in there.
Okay, great, thank you. And then just back to the school thing real quick. I just went on a trip to a very bike ped friendly city, and as I did the last time I did that, I sent all of council a trip report with photos of the infrastructure, so I haven't gotten a chance to do that yet. But I'll bring up here, one of the things that they had in school zone areas was the street signs had the regular street sign, and underneath it said school zone. So I think for safe routes to school purposes, some kind of delineation so it's visible for drivers. I don't know if that's signs on every corner, or there's a blue line down the street that indicates, hey, this is a school zone, heads up, but something where safe routes to schools are a little bit more obvious to folks who are not participating in that walk to school. I think that could be an interesting and safe thing to add.
He's making
Hey,
that
Kyle.
note, I can assure you. I didn't even need to look. I
Yeah,
knew
but I'll have
quickly.
pictures of that I will send out,
Okay.
along with
Great.
some really good daylighting and other things that I
Great.
got the chance to enjoy, bike lanes, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
You did have a good time while you were there. It
Yes.
wasn't
We're
work.
sharing pictures the whole time.
Yeah, all my pictures are just infrastructure. There's not a single one of us.
It was
I'm not
Greene
surprised.
County, right? It was Greene County.
I was in Canada.
Lloyd?
I have a question.
Okay. Thank you. I did have a follow-up one with Michael, which you were saying about the impact of funding. you had mentioned the new administration. I'm thinking about, I thought that a lot of our funding that we got for buses were from the federal government. Do you foresee that changing?
What I was speaking to with the funding was the operation. So there's two pots of money. We get federal money, and then we get state assistance. I was referencing the state assistance.
Yeah.
But on the federal side, for our capital, we've known that most of that money for alternative fuel vehicles is dried up or will sunset this year. I mean, there was just a round of low or no emissions grant. We submitted our application. Unfortunately, we were not successful. And I'm pretty sure that's the last year that's going to happen. So we're probably looking at 3 years before that, if it's possible that it'll come back. What do we do in the interim? Part of that scenario is that we've already started. We've got electric buses that are coming. They're on order. 2 of them will be here May of 26. So we're charging hard and getting the infrastructure put in place. We already have 2 school buses that are here. All the infrastructure is in. So that same process we just did, we now have to do on the transit side. We still need to make some significant changes to our facilities to manage battery electric buses. That's pretty expensive, which is why we went after the low or no grant, so we can actually get a new maintenance facility. But that still doesn't stop the fact that we need to make some safety improvements to be able to handle that infrastructure that's coming. We're working with the state to do it, to follow their normal path, but that's 2-3 years out. So we still need to figure out something in the interim.
So what I foresee is that all of the localities in the state that has a transit system, and some great commercials on now talking about, wherever you are in the state, you can connect with transit. I think it's really good that everyone will be maybe vying for the state funds, even if it's maybe more competitive because it's not any on the federal side.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what we hope that our federal administration would calm down and return to focus. Because usually what happens from a Democratic to a Republican transition is that you see the priorities change, but the money still flows. Mm-hmm. And transportation, infrastructure, public safety, law enforcement would be areas that they would invest in. That's not happening yet. I'm not sure when it might happen or if it will happen. That whole FedWatch conversation I started with you all last year, I still have a folder labeled FedWatch. There's nothing in it. I haven't been told that we've lost anything. I still concern myself with the idea that we could. Yeah. I mean, thank you, because I have no wood. But I think ideally that's just something that we remain conscious of. But what is materializing is less likely for these other investments that we would expect to come out of the federal government are not happening because they're being used in other ways. So that's the shift.
So if we were to, with the budget we approve on April 9th, approve 10 or 11 additional drivers.
Right.
First, do you foresee any issues in hiring that many drivers in this environment? And second, will we?
Look at me.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
You saw him look right at me, right?
Yeah, no.
I asked that question too.
I'm sorry, yeah. And secondly, would we have vehicles for them to drive, even if we could?
Take the vehicles first. We are at a point now that we have the capacity to add the additional bodies. So vehicles is not an issue until we get roughly around 90 to 95 drivers. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
I'm hopeful, though, that we talk about capacity to train folks, and if we hire 10, I would just say in the last 6 months, we have had more applications processed than we've had in my 6 years being here. It's interesting. You can see actually in their resumes, their applications, some of those have been let go of from federal positions. So they are coming to what they perceive, I assume what they perceive to be is a more stable work environment with great benefit package, which the city has. I think our capacity is probably 15, 16 is the max, and we've talked about that number, that we feel comfortable with our limited amount of supervision to train, because they have to get the number of individual hours with a trainer to be able to qualify. 15, 16 is probably the max, so 10 is a good number for us.
Got it.
And I would just say that we have to be conscious of the cost associated with whatever the number of new drivers that we add, whether the market will produce 15 or 16 drivers, as Mr. Williams is pointing out here. I then have to be pragmatic about the idea that I've got to make it fit into the budget. And I've got to make it fit into the budget with 8 other priority areas that you gave me because you all were unwilling to reduce that number for me.
Yeah.
And there are other things that aren't really on that list that still come at a significant cost. And it's the market producing the bodies to actually fill the seats, and then there's your ability to afford that just the same. So that is where that tension that we've talked about in your retreat back in August, that's what we're really trying to prioritize. I would love to be able to say to the community at large that really wants to focus on transportation, let's get 40 drivers. I don't know that if I said that we had the money to pay for it, we would find 40 drivers. That's a real question. And then on top of that, do we really have what we need in place today as they start to join us to actually be deployed in an effective way that screen that I showed you changes before it becomes painful that they're here and we don't even have a route for them to run or something like that. A lot of my conversation that I've had since I've been in this seat has really been not about rushing into doing things because we just want it done, but it is pacing. And I know that's not comfortable for a lot of people, but I think that's what we have to do so that we can really do this right and do it the best way we can, because I would hate to make the change tied to tax increases and then it not work, because that probably was the worst example of what we could do to our larger community, to tax them and then not actually get them the enhanced service immediately. And it takes us forever to then fill all the seats to get the enhanced service, but yet the money has come in and now I have a surplus, which I love surpluses. But I don't want big ones, because if I have a big one, then something's still off in how we're managing what we're doing. And my goal has been to try to help you avoid increasing just because.
Yeah. And my last comment, and I know you have a couple more, is
Thanks.
the comments about amenities, and you know, when I'm out, a lot of time I may send you a picture or something that I'm walking and of overflow trash can or something at a bus stop, and I'll send it to you. You're like, oh, Juan must be walking again. So, but what is the process? I mean, is there like someone that, I don't know if it's from CAT or Public Works that rides around and look, because that's a big part of people see that it's not, you know, tidy, then they may not want to get on it, you know, the bus.
So we do have, I have very limited staff. I have 2 individuals that help with cleaning bus stop shelters. We do that periodically, twice a year, normally in the spring and the summer. That's just the capacity that we have. But the primary pain point for us is when the public really tells us if they spot an issue, and then we will send that crew out to take care of whether it's you know, a dog has used it at this bus stop, or someone's hit a bench or something along those lines. We're relying really on the public at this point. I don't have staff that's able to go around the city and actually just continue to monitor what our amenities look like. I would love. I'm not advocating for anything up here. I just want to make sure Mr. Sanders understands that.
That was a request, yes.
But I want to make sure that our focus is on trying to get you the most reliable transit system that we possibly can. all those other support pieces as we build out, we will maybe able to shift people's focus and their job duties to incorporate some of that, but that's not our focus right now. And our focus is trying to get you, the people in the house, and get them trained, and then also get our on-time performance up, which is, we are struggling there.
Right, but you all see the connection
I do.
between a tidy stop and people, and all those
Right.
things you mentioned.
Mhm.
If people don't see that it's clean and all that, then they won't get on, even if it's every 5 minutes.
Yes,
So,
sir.
That's duly noted. It is part of what we are looking at and why it isn't just drivers. That's a great
Yeah.
example of that.
Natalie.
Thanks. Quick follow-up to Juan's question. If people do notice a trash can that needs attending, is a MySeville request the best way to let staff know?
That's the way we prefer, so that we can manage it accordingly. Part of what the reconciliation has to be is that we need to lean on other departments to help, because CAT doesn't have the staff to do that. So then the question is it Parks and Rec or Public Service? Those are things that we're trying to work through now.
Okay. And just in case people don't know, MySeville is an app you can download and post pictures and requests for anything from a trash can that's overflowing to a streetlight that needs to be replaced. Okay, the questions that I had were, for these drivers, is this just CAT service, or does this include pupil transportation as well?
This is just CAT, this is just transit. That's
Okay.
correct. Pupil transportation, we have had conversations with Kim and their team 2 weeks ago. So they will be making a request
As a part of their
as a part
presentation.
of the presentation.
Okay, thanks. We'll put a pin in that. And then I just wanted to acknowledge the hard work of folks who have been advocating for 15-minute routes for a long time, and the fact that we're able to incorporate that into this 76 driver scenario, knowing that especially the 7 is one of our busiest routes, and that's going to be really helpful for the folks who rely on it. My one question for that, though, is it looks like the 15-minute routes start at 9 and end at 5. Is there,
And it's 6, but
and it's like, sorry, the 5 o'clock chunk. So for the people getting to and from work, are we
Yep.
able to scoot that out just a little smidge?
not without more drivers. We've looked at the numbers. It really does fit into the 9 o'clock, because we'll be shifting to get everybody to work as much as we possibly can. We're shifting those to incorporate the 9 o'clock hour. So they're not going home. We're basically moving them from one route to be able to give you more service on the 7.
And would it be possible to, since it's that X number of hours, to scoot it forward, so it would be from 8 to 5, there's 15-minute routes, so
We
people
did
can
look
get
at
to
that.
work,
It's
but
actually would
get
require
home a
4
little-
more drivers to do that, because the model just doesn't work.
Okay.
And that's part of what we have to look at. I mean, that could end up being a part of the scenario that I can bring to you as it relates to there being a budget gap, because I'm anticipating that there will be one. And if that were the case, then that would be for a council then to be able to consider, are you willing to do what it would take to then close that gap? Because that would then be a recurring expense if we were to add 4 more drivers. And that's part of what I will not be able to see without some assistance.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if we are making it a 15-minute route, it's the most useful 15-minute route that we can make
Right.
it for the folks there. Okay. Thank you very much.
I have one last question. Meadow Creek Trail. I'm not going to use the word boondoggle because it is a project with a lot of positives, but if my memory is correct, I think when this started years ago, the city's hoped-for cost was $500,000. I think we're at $3.5 million now. And as you've mentioned, you've come back to us twice for requests for additional money. What is the size of the request you're anticipating in January?
600,000 or 700,000.
So,
Somewhere in that ballpark. Part of what I'm wrestling with is coming back to you and saying that I think we may need to move on and not do the project. But I haven't been ready to do that yet, because I want to make sure that they have been able to check the numbers a third or fourth time and make sure that we do have what really is the right number. I feel better about the work that's being done today to confirm what the cost is going to be, but I think that's the number that has been floated. I haven't gotten an official number, but I think that's the number
Yeah.
that's floated.
and and hopefully there's a lot of value engineering to do, but
I think we've done all that we can, so that's why they're trying to probably figure out, is there yet anything else we can do to get that number to stay in that area?
A rope swing.
zip lines.
Not ADA compliant, so no, we can't do that.
Little ferry.
So it'll be like $4.1 million, and at that point, would there even be an assurance that that is the,
It would be, because I'm not coming back.
um,
We really are at a point, though, I believe that where we are is that we would probably be able to start next year, and it wouldn't take us too long to get started after we clear the long-eared bat situation that prevents us from doing construction. So if we get that squared away, which is the spring, then I believe that we would be able to make significant movement forward. But that's the reason why I've more or less pressed the team to make sure that if you come back, which they've said they've got to come back, then come back with a real number, and that number, I hope, can be in that range.
What's the story with the
Yeah,
bat?
there's actually there's bats.
Long-eared bats in Charlottesville, yes. And we protect their habitat, so we can't always do things for that reason.
Right.
Meadow Creek Trail?
I think it's in that area.
I knew there was an issue, there was
Yeah.
an issue with the,
Thank you.
It's come up
the
before.
botanical garden.
Yeah, it's come up before. I learned about it about 3 years ago.
And we're handling it safely and carefully.
Yeah, we leave them alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let them do what they need to do, and
Respectfully.
then we get back to work when they're finished. Yes.
Any other comments?
I'm done.
Appreciate our friends from FAR interns being here. You guys rock. Thank you for, coming for this. You're seeing, kind of how the sausage is made, so appreciate it. And Alex with Impact, thank you. So this is kind of the work of Impact, and it's the congregations and the mosques and the synagogue, so thank you for being here. That being said, we're going to go into closed session. We'll be back at 6:30.
I have a motion for a closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code. I move that the City Council close this open meeting and convene in the closed session as authorized by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as follows. Pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 for discussion and consideration of prospective candidates to be appointed to the following boards and/or committees: the Police Citizen Oversight Board and to the City Planning Commission.
second?
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please say no. We'll be back at 6:30. Thank you.